you've seen me introduce a speaker before, you know that I really hate reading bios because they're usually just a litany of words. People are more than where they graduated from or where they worked. But in the case of Jonell Logan, I have to, because you need to know the caliber of the person who is about to come up and speak to you and share with you. Jonell is a curator, an arts advocate, and a nonprofit leader who believes in building visionary, mission-driven organizations that support contemporary art and culture. Originally from New York, we're not holding that against you, Jonell has worked in New York and the Southeast at arts organizations, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Ever heard of it? Whitney Museum of Art, Studio Museum in Harlem, the Gibbs Museum of Art in Charleston, South Carolina, the Harvey B. Gantt Center, the McCall Center, where she recently served as vice president and creative director. She believes that community matters, and Jonell is invested in servant leadership, and boy, is she. And you're going to hear a lot about that. She just completed her term as the president of the Junior League in Charlotte. Amazing. She served on the board of directors at the Women's Impact Fund and is a member of the new generation of African-American philanthropists and an alumnus of Leadership Charlotte and the American Leadership Forum. I know that Elizabeth McKee, who is the ED of Leadership Charlotte, is right there. I know you got to be proud this morning of this alum of yours. And through all of this, Jonell has learned the power of systems and the importance of intentionally stretching organizations to evolve in ways that are authentic, inclusive, and impactful. And as we got ready for this talk, we talked about patterns. And there are ways to change patterns. One, which I think is used way too much, is the dynamite pattern. Or the dynamite system. You go in and you go, I don't like this, let's blow it up and start over. And that does not always work. It's really easy to rip something apart. It's very difficult to rebuild it. Or you can say, this is how we've always done it, which is the easiest way. What Jonell does is she goes into, I've watched her do this numerous times, she goes in and she looks at the subtleties. What are the aspects of the pattern that need to be shifted? Not ripped apart, not torn to the ground, not nuked, shifted. Where she goes and she makes those changes, it's for the better, but it's not destructive. It's challenging, it's disruptive, but not destructive. And I found Jonell to be a friend, an ally, a sounding board, a sage, a mentor, a truth mirror, a champion, a challenger. She has, in my mind, the best smile in Charlotte. Every time I see her, she's happy to see me or she's very good at faking. And the smile is so beautiful that I will take it either way. And the best thing I think I can say about Jonell is that when she goes somewhere, she always leaves it better than she found it. And for that, I would like to share with you the amazing Jonell Logan. Get up here. Share yourself. I've been holding it inside for a long time.
That's totally unfair.
And now, competently give your speech.
I know, right? For that, clearly, I was not ready for that. Because, thank you, it's so kind. And the work is hard, and it's amazing to be seen. So thank you. So let me get myself together, right? So what's interesting is that, and I just said this idea of being seen for the work that you do is so important and it's so empowering, especially when it's the work that you can only do. I have tried other things, failed, and it's okay, because it taught me that the work that I'm supposed to be doing is supporting artists, supporting arts-based organizations, being in community, and being willing to kind of take the risk and push organizations to think about who they're serving and what they're doing, and to lean into the idea that it is okay to do something just a little bit different. Because with that change, we can have such an amazing impact. And so after we talked about today, and I started to dissect and to really think about how I got here, There were a couple of things that I realized were important. One, being from New York is a fabulous thing. Yes? Anybody else? Thank you. Right? We are here, and we are proud to be here. Thank you. But I grew up, I'm going to date myself a little bit. So I am a Gen Xer. Yes, right? So you basically grew up figuring it out, right? So I have that. And I grew up in New York before it was cute. It was spicy. And so my entire existence was really figuring out how to make order out of chaos. And when I think about how I did that, my family, like a lot of others, taught me to recognize patterns, to think about behaviors that you see or conditions that you see over and over again, and then think about what that means and how to circumvent it, right, to be safe, or embrace it to grow. So that was something that was really important for me growing up. And I have to keep on track because I will talk to you forever. It was just like earlier today, making order out of chaos. And so patterns are incredibly important to us as human beings. It helps us see the world, it helps us navigate it. And out of those patterns, we have, did I do it right? No, I didn't. Ha-ha. Habits. And I've thanked Steve. I was like, Steve, hey, we're going to talk about patterns. Can we do something with like tessellation and color and a couple of words? And he did it. So thank you publicly, Steve, for your work on this. So when we think about habits, right, habits come out of our observation of patterns in our repeated behavior. And we talk about humans are habit-driven. It helps us solve the world. It helps us navigate our spaces. It also brings order. So I want you to think, I have habits. I want you to take 30 seconds. Share with your neighbor a habit that you have, like one that you feel that you can publicly express. Quickly, right? Because we're all about, this is the human condition. Let's talk about the human condition. What's one of your habits? Okay, I wish I had that. All right. Lots of habits in the room. Can I take this out? Okay. So, as we bring it back together and talk. Oh, Juan and CT are the worst. All right. Let's bring it back together. You don't want me to sing, so let's not do that. Maybe you do. All right, so raise your hand. Who wants to share one of your habits? Yes.
I told her that I have a really bad habit of going with the flow instead of going with the responsibility.
Ooh. Just in case you didn't hear that, she has a bad habit of going with the flow versus going with the responsibility. All right, who else wants to share a habit? Yes.
I have a habit of having to follow through on everything. So if something is on my task list and I don't follow through, I have trouble relaxing until I do.
Okay, so checklist people. She has a habit of executing the entire list, or she cannot relax. I need you to touch me, though, because I do not necessarily have that habit. Yes?
This isn't the one that I shared, but I have a habit of finding the silver lining no matter how hard.
Yes. The habit of finding the silver lining. And one more. Who wants to share one more? Yes. Okay, you want to be an early bird, but she has the habit of snoozing. I have figured out that if you move your device far away, no? Oh, wow. That's commitment to the snooze, and I respect that, okay? So we all have these habits, right, that we live with and we try to modify. And if you think about social media, right? Social media, the Stoics, Steve Jobs, all have shared that we should have habits that guide our lives, whether it's waking up at 5 in the morning and working out and journaling, or my habit, wearing black all the time. I actually tried to wear a red and white dress this morning, but I couldn't do it. So, like, wearing black, or things that this idea that you streamline, right? So that your brain can then be used for other things, right? You don't have decision-making fatigue. So this notion of habits is something that we really kind of embrace and think about and try to practice. Now, when we think about nonprofit organizations or organizations in general, they're built by people. They're built by us. And so that notion of habits bleeds into those spaces, right? And here, I kind of want to talk about a couple of things, right? This notion of structure, the way that we construct and build organizations is important. It allows us to have a shared language, right? A way or methodology of working. I am in the arts. I have been in the arts my entire career. And so thinking about structures in the arts, there's a reason why you have to really standardize humidity and temperature in spaces that show work. There's not a lot of space to flex around that, right? It keeps the work safe, and it encourages and allows people to lend you things because they know that you're going to take care of it. It is important to have a standard or a structure around the positions in these organizations because it allows for collaboration and partnership and this understanding that you are responsible for this and you are responsible for that. And so when we're talking today and thinking about notions of structure and habit and patterns, they're not bad things, right? They're the things that we need to operate in space, right? It gives us comfort. It helps us kind of guide our way, right? It's funny, as I was thinking about this, I was like, well, what's another like space where the structure of a thing is helpful? And I thought about the gym, but we'll talk about that in a minute, right? How many of you do group exercise class? Raise your hand. Okay. All right, we'll talk about it. Okay. So, but this whole idea of structure is important. Now, the trick is, and this is where I kind of, I guess, have found myself, is that while these structures are important, these methods and ways of working, sometimes we limit ourselves, right? And they become barriers for the work that we could do at organizations. And again, I've been in the arts forever, so I want to kind of think about the structure and the history of arts spaces. How many of you know about the history of museums? Okay. All right, I'm going to give you like try a 30-second, maybe a minute, right? So museums started as cabinets of curiosity. They were collections made by rich Europeans who had traveled around the world and brought back really cool things and put them in these special rooms in their homes that they would then share with other rich Europeans, right? That's the history. And if we think about museums and their founding, a lot of museums started with individual collections. So these cabinets got a little too big, right? They weren't practical. There are other incentives for sharing. So these institutions were built to share these collections. When we think about galleries, a similar history. When we think about residencies, artist residencies, a similar practice, right? Artists would go be invited to a wealthy person's salon. They would be invited to think and work and create, and then they would go home. Now, the trick is, while all of that is fantastic, that structure continues into contemporary practice around art spaces. And the challenge is that culturally and socially, it leaves out an entire population of people, multiple populations of people. So that structure, which is great, inherently is challenging. Because I believe that culture belongs to everyone. And I believe that the stories that we tell in these spaces need to be broader and reflective of the people and the communities that they're in. And so what happens is that the structure kind of dictates the habit, and then the habits get stuck, and then we get into those spaces where it's difficult to change. We've always done it this way. Going back to museums, just think about it for a second. Museums are open frequently, and this is not a dig because I love museums. I have grown up in them. I have been in major institutions, right? But if we don't ask, we can't change. So museums are open during the week frequently. Monday, well, not Monday, because Monday's our sleepy day, but Tuesday through the weekend, but during the week, 9 to 5. What's the problem with that? Right, if you are working, you cannot go other than your lunch break. So the practice of adding an evening and adding the weekend is something that's happened. But if you work on the weekends, like many people do, then what? So again, starting to unpack and think about these habits and practices and structures. Can I change it? So this is where I come in. So first, I want to thank everybody that I know for coming, because I'm about to say something that you know is true of me. So when I was a kid, there were 3 questions that I would always ask. You don't know about the kid part because most of you know me since I'm an adult. However, the next part is important. I would ask why. I'd ask what if, right? And then my other question, and I had to clarify, is why can't we? Because why can't we is always followed by I bet I can. and some people know that in various situations it's probably not a good idea. But why, what if, and why can't we? Those are questions that I've historically asked. And there are questions that were embraced when I was younger. I have an amazing family who often just kind of let me chatter, ask questions, answer as many as they could, and then let me figure out the rest. Like that whole, I go figure it out, sis. Okay, right? And that was important. But they're questions that I ask today. And what is interesting is that those are questions that I, as an adult, learned were questions that change leaders ask about organizations. Why are we doing it this way? What if we try something different? And why can't we experiment, look, empower other people to do other things? And it's amazing to ask, but it's also kind of problematic. And I ask these questions, I have to say, in the context of the mission and vision of an organization. I love a good mission and vision. It's the thing that keeps us honest. It's the thing that keeps our collective moving forward together around an organization. It lets you see if this is a good fit, because frequently we're afraid to let go of things and people and board members, et cetera, right? But if it's not a good fit, are you serving the organization and the individual that you think you're serving? So these things are really important to me. And I have to say, it's not always easy. But before I talk about that, I want to talk a little bit about like where that comes from for me. So as a kid, I grew up in Harlem on 127th Street between 7th and 8th, yes, right? Again, in New York when it was spicy. And in spite of that, my aunt would take me to museums and galleries and Broadway productions all the time, including the Whitney and the Met, where I ended up working. And so as I'm thinking about, like, again, why am I doing this? Why do I do the work? Why am I, like, subjecting myself sometimes to madness? I realize that some of that foundation laid there. How many of you know artist Red Grooms? Okay. Red Grooms. 3. Okay. Don't look it up now because I want you to pay attention. But make sure you look up Red Grooms. He's an artist that I saw at the Whitney when I was young. And he, for me, was the foundation for a lot of the way that I think. He was an artist who took the rules of sculpture and completely altered them. He didn't throw them out the window. He altered them in a way that allowed him to build work that was a reflection of New York during its spicy era. To the point where he built this like subway that you could walk through in a gallery space, and like the floor would shift. And it was the first time that I had ever experienced artwork that was that transformative for me. It showed the world that I lived in. It was this amazing, like, modern approach to sculpture, something that was often sacred, that you couldn't interact with, that you couldn't touch, that didn't look like me and the people that I would see every day. And so for me, he became this model of what you can do when you follow the rules, but you just shift it a little bit, right? So in my like formative years, that was like an example for me. And then who else was, Vincent Abloh. Y'all know Vincent, right? Or of him, designer, Louis Vuitton. Okay, look him up. So he, unfortunately, is no longer with us, but he talked about this notion of 3%. If you take something creative, a design, and you shift it 3%, it's enough to make it something new, but it's also something that people can recognize and continue to connect with. And so those ideas of change within a framework is something that really has resonated with me and been important to me and a part of my practice. Now, to the not so fun part. It's not always easy. And so I'm gonna share two stories, and I don't want awe, but like there are two real moments in my life where I realized that this is not gonna be easy work, but again, it's all that I know that I can do. When I was in grad school the first time, this is crazy to say out loud. Okay, but I'm gonna share it with you, we're all friends here. So I was in grad school, and I practiced art as well as art history forever. So I was in an art history program. And I wanted to explore Fluxus, which is a kind of performance, look it up too, right? So Fluxus. And there was this professor who was studying at the school, so I studied with him. And then I wanted to, for my thesis, write about an artist. My advisor, who was the chair of the department, wanted me to write about a particular artist that everyone had written about. And I did not want to do that because I want to do what I want. And because I loved Fluxus, had connected with one of the original Black Fluxus artists. He was living in Germany, tracked him down, sent him questions, we did this whole interview, et cetera. And when I shared this with my advisor, I was super excited, and she was like, no, you can't do that. You need to write about this person that everyone else has written about, right? Structure, habit. And when I said I didn't want to, she let me know that if I didn't, I would not get my degree from that school. And guess what? I did not get that degree from that school. Yes, I did not. I went somewhere else. That's fine. But I also ended up working at the Whitney. And so this idea that it will hold you back is not a thing, right? People will try to thwart you, and it's not always easy work, but if you're committed to it, if you know, right, that change is important, then you have to, I have to lean into it. And then the other example is not necessarily as bad, right? Well, maybe it is. All right, so maybe I won't share that one either, right? Well, no. Okay, so I've been in trouble at organizations too. And in a way that like is a testament to like belief. So there are a number of organizations that have said, we want to have new people, expand our audience, bring in folks that have not been here before, which is great. But then when you get into the work of it all, then structure, habit, pattern comes in. No, we don't want to change the exhibitions. Or no, we want to, maybe if we change a food in a particular way, it will attract a different audience, right? Or we can do the show once a year during a particular time of year and then expect radical change. And that's not true, right? So when you say that's not true, when you say that if you are committed to change, then we have to change, that's a challenge. But there are also organizations and space and opportunity to do amazing work, right? So when you deviate, there's this amazing opportunity for transformation. And so I'll share 2 positive opportunities. So as mentioned before, I recently ended my tenure as the president of the Junior League of Charlotte. Yay! Junior League in the house. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And for those of you that don't know the Junior League, here's a shameless plug. It is a women's organization, an international organization that has a chapter here in Charlotte. There are over 1,300 members of this organization here in our fair city. And we're dedicated to this idea of serving community through grants and volunteerism and training women to be leaders, right? There are members that float amongst you that you do not know, right? But we are present. And what's interesting is it's a very old organization. In Charlotte, in 2 years, it'll be the 100th anniversary of the Charlotte chapter. Yes. And the broader organization is older, right? So with 100 years comes habits, right? And this perception of what the organization looks like. And to be transparent, I might not be the first person that you think of historically when we've thought of the organization. But there's been change, and that's important to highlight. And so our biggest challenge recently, because if we think about trends in philanthropy currently, individual giving has changed. Corporate giving has changed. Our practice of joining organizations has changed. All of those things have decreased. And like other nonprofit organizations in Charlotte, figuring out what that means financially for the organization was something that was top of mind and super important. And so thinking about and moving away from we have always done it this way, we did a couple of things differently. We empowered members to think about what it means to really work together to solve the challenge. And so when we did that, we found that groups of women who normally work in separate committees came together and worked collaboratively. I can't see that. Okay, a little fast done. This is super fast because I'm almost done, right? So with that, we thought about how to collaborate. We thought about new ways of fundraising. What if we had a good time and partnered with local companies? We could go out together, raise money, and have an impact. Fabulous. What if we thought about the sacredness of our building and used it as a tool to not only have rentals, but to be a space that other nonprofit organizations could actually afford to rent? And as a result, we exceeded our fundraising goal by $30,000 and our rental goals by $20,000. Yay. Yay. And then the other thing was, we mentioned that I was at McCall Center. And while we were there, the core program there is the residency program. And so in thinking about it and accessibility, one of the big things that I'm happy happened under my tenure was that we changed the residency in the summer to be for parents and educators. And so, thank you. And those of you who are artists, who are caregivers, know that you cannot necessarily just go somewhere for 3 months with a kid during the school year. So by changing the model, we were able to serve parents who otherwise, and teachers who otherwise could not participate in the program, right? And this all comes from asking why, what if, and I'm gonna just put it in, I bet if we did this, right? And so I know that we're out of time, but I wanna say this. I've learned a lot about myself in this work and about organizations in this work. And it's so important that we, as creatives and as leaders, build space to ask those questions, to empower staff members and our colleagues and people that we work with to ask and to give them space and support to do the change, right? To break the habit, to deviate and be transformative. So with that, I thank you all for coming this morning.
Logan. Oh, thank you so much. Jonell Logan, everybody. We love you, and we're grateful for you. And folks, with that, we've come to the end of another Creative Mornings Charlotte event.